In this video, I'm going to show you how to join two squares with a whip stitch. Now, I've already done a video on how to do the whip stitch, but I've gotten the question on how to end the whip stitch. How do you do what you do with the tail when you're finished? So I decided I'm going to just make two little squares and as a sample and show you. I'm using a red yarn against cream and green squares. Normally you want to use a color yarn that will blend either the cream or the green. Most of the time, most people I believe would go with the lighter color of the two squares to put them together. So however, whatever color you do, but I'm using red so you can see what I'm doing. And plus my red yarn's a little bulkier than the yarn in my squares, so it won't be hidden as much as it normally would when you do this, but I'm doing this for demonstration purposes. So what you're going to do is go in the back loop of the square closest to you and the front loop, which when the square is facing you is the back loop. The one behind it. So the loops that are closest together. And then you want to leave a bit of a tail. And what you're going to do is you can sew over the tail now or draw it in later. I'm going to draw it in later just so that you can see what I'm doing with these stitches. Okay, so now we want to go back in that same loop we pulled that yarn through one more time. Hold that tail down so it don't come out. Pull it through. Okay, now the next stitch, the loops that are touching each other, and go through that way and go to the next stitch, and you're going front to back, and this is called the whip stitch because it just whips around in a coil. And if you want to hide it more, you can pull these stitches really tight. But if you're using a matching color yarn, you might not need to do so as much because it's not going to matter if it shows. So you work this all the way across. Until you get to the end of that edge that you're seaming. And now before you want to lock it in, you hold those ends and pull tight. And that hides the stitches a little bit better. You see that? Okay, now the question was what you do with your end. I am going to clip this off because I have a lot of yarn left and need just enough to draw in. So I'm going to cut that off. Now to hide these ends, start with the one I finished with and flip it over so that I'm going whichever natural ways. If you're left-handed, you want to go the other way. And I'll go up and take the needle under each of those stitches for an inch or so, and because I pulled it tight it makes it a little harder to hide. But like I said, if you are using a yarn that's the same color as your squares, you're not going to see it so much. So in this case, since it's a small square, I'm only going to go under 4 stitches. You usually want to go further than that, like an inch or so. The looser your stitches, the larger the hook you use, the more you want to, the longer you want your overlap to be. So if you're using a really chunky yarn and really big hook, you'll want to go 3 or 4 inches. If you're using a finer yarn and a smaller hook, then you can go overlap it less. Okay, and then go and get the other end. Pretend I've already drawn in these tails. I just didn't bother doing that for the demonstration. Okay. Thread the needle and go under And also for doing this, I'd probably be better off using a smaller needle because these are really tight. Okay, here's a smaller needle. This will be a little easier. It's going to be harder to thread, but you fold the yarn over the eye of the needle and pull it out, and then you push the eye over that fold to thread a needle. And I use some pretty bulky yarn for this little needle, and so that makes it a little better. And there we go. I'm going to put this needle under the red stitches that I've made, and it doesn't hurt to go into the squares a little bit too. We're just hiding the tail here. So it's the same as hiding your tail in the rest of your work. You bring it back the other direction and then clip it close to your work. So that is the whip stitch. Now it looks yucky because like I said, I used a bulkier yarn and a contrasting color yarn, and that's what it is on the back. So that's how you end that whip stitch, is you just draw the yarn back under the stitches a few inches. I hope this helped, and for more videos, make sure you check out youtube.com Beth in Texas 1.